Good morning, it's Stephanie. It's been a little while since I've done a video. Um, Getting ready to leave on a work trip, and that always brings up trauma stuff for me. And I promised I would start getting to the actual trauma. It's not easy to do. So, like a lot of people, I grew up in a family that wasn't real solid. My parents, I've been talking about this with my counselor, so I have some pretty serious abandonment issues. I think that's pretty common also. And I always talk about the first abandonment that I kind of can identify is my dad. And I don't post these things to try and make my parents feel bad. I post them for understanding because I've made mistakes as a parent myself, and without recognizing or realizing the impact it was going to have on my kids. We don't intentionally try to hurt our children, and we definitely don't try to traumatize them. At least I'd like to hope that most people don't. But anyway, so while I was young, my parents, they just, were having issues. There was some undiagnosed mental illness, and they just weren't doing very well, and they separated and eventually divorced. And during that time, I had very limited contact with my dad. Phone contact is what I remember, but I was very, very young. Like, we're talking like kindergarten. So I don't really remember a lot of that. What I remember is that sense of abandonment. Now, when you're very, very small, when you're unable to really sort of identify and verbalize some of our emotional experiences, then we internalize a lot, or we can. And that's what I did. So, the trauma for me, trauma is when something happens to you that makes you question, or makes you feel, it shouldn't be questioned, when you feel that your life is in some way in danger, or at least for me, this is how I think of trauma. It's when something happens that sort of is outside the realm of normal human experience, right? So it's when something so dramatic happens that it makes you feel like, your existence is threatened. And so it sends you into sort of a really hyperarousal state where you're constantly kind of looking for and trying to assess whether you're safe. And so when this happens when you're very, very young, and I know that divorce is a really common experience for kids, so is trauma. So I just want to put that out there. But in any event, when that sort of event happens to children and it's not explained well, or they aren't supported, or they don't receive sort of the support that they need to process that experience and recognize and reconnect with both parents and realize that nobody's leaving you, and that you will still have those supports in your life, and parents will still do what parents do. Most kids kind of process that, and they come through it on the other side doing okay, right? Like, that's how we process trauma in a way that's healthy, right? Something happens, we get some support, we process it, we realize, okay, we're okay, and we're gonna be okay on the other side of these events. When that doesn't happen, so when you're young, and in my case, my parents separated, and my relationship with my father did not continue in the way that it should have. And my relationship with my mother was also affected because her ability to parent and be present was limited. She was now a single parent managing the responsibilities of two adults one person, 4 children under the age of 6. So that was my first trauma. And it just kept going from there.